It sure doesn't look like a good day to fish. It's gray skies and rainy and cold, the time of year when most of us are concentrating on deer hunting. But even if the bass aren't biting, my buddy Dan Sherry's always fishing for a new tip.
These bigger tubes have been the ticket this year.
Well, he intimidates me quite a bit. With that wealth of knowledge, I learn a lot from people like him.
Dan's not giving himself quite enough credit. He's a retired TWRA biologist, so he knows his fish. And believe it or not, I'm feeling pretty good about our chances. These fish must be reading a different book than we are, because that's where they're supposed to be. At least one of them.
Yeah.
The leaves are turning, winter's just around the corner, and this is probably going to be Dan's last trip of the season.
This is about the end of my getting out. Usually I don't get out in the winter. I'm sure Joey does. I learn a lot getting out here and seeing that it still can be done. Even it's kind of nippy today.
And it's not totally uncomfortable. If you're prepared for it, you're dressed for it. These are some of the best days. October and November are the best fishing days for me usually.
That pipe.
You know, I just stopped. I told you earlier, I go to grab the trolling motor. And that's what usually happens. All I did was stop that, and then he saw that floating up, and then I cranked it one time, and he wanted it worse than I did. I'm not going to say exactly where we are. Let's just call it a private lake somewhere in Middle Tennessee. But these are typical fall conditions you can find anywhere. The water's clear and low, the sky's dark, and this is actually a good time to catch a big bass because they're trying to put on weight and get ready for winter. Dan, one of the things that I try to do in the fall is cover all the water columns, because those fish can be just about anywhere. So usually I pinpoint 3 very specific lures. I like this jig a lot for some obvious reasons, but I also like to throw a spinnerbait and a crankbait. And the good part about throwing those baits is you can cover, again, all 3 water columns. The jig is really versatile. You can fish it in 6 inches of water or 16 feet of water. And a spinnerbait, pretty much the same thing. And a crankbait also, and they all have the vertical and horizontal appeal that makes a bass want to bite them, because everything they eat will do exactly the same thing. Everything they eat just about has the ability to swim vertically and horizontally. There's one swimming with it. That's a good one. That's a good one right there.
That's a good one.
Yeah, he was swimming with it. He barely hit it. That's a decent fish. It's more than a decent fish. It's a good one. Oh, that's a huge fish. Ooh, Lord. Oh, man, look at that one. Look at that one. Oh. Oh. Yes! Look at that. What do you say, a pound and a half? Not bad. Not bad at all. Retrieve speed is so important. Bass, especially big bass, want to expend as little energy as possible hunting a meal. So putting your lure close to them in their strike zone is critical.
What'd you catch that on there?
Man, that was a jig, and I'm telling you what, I live to fish that jig, and a fall fish, weather or not, boy, that's a great fish right there. So we're gonna just go ahead and release that one. And here we go. We'll be Tennesseeing you. There's one. That's a good one. He's gonna jump. Yep. Speaking of changing up and using different baits, that first fish was on a tube, this one's on a crankbait, and Dan's throwing a spinnerbait with a bluegill colored skirt. Easy now, let's be nice to each other.
You don't lose them like I do.
This is usually how I lose them. Somehow you don't notice the weather at a time like this. Now he's done. There you go. All right, that's a good fish. Calls for another picture. It's a good lesson on fall fishing. Fish are schooled up when the water gets cold. If you can find them, you can catch them. It takes a little slower retrieve. Sometimes live bait. Sometimes live bait's a ticket to catching those fish. Oh, that's a good fish. I can tell by the swirl back there. Change your baits, put them close to the fish, experiment with retrieve until you get the speed just right. And when you get a nice one, don't forget to take a picture. I gave you too good a spinnerbait. I'm Joey Monteleone on Tennessee's Wild Side.